Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the AI Interconnect Podcast, where we talk with the builders, operators, and founders who are using technology and AI to reshape real industries. I'm your host, Laurent, and today we are diving into the world of commercial property operation, field services, and how real estate visual data is changing the way properties are managed at scale. I'm joined by David LaFore, CEO of PropTechPros, and David leads a company that combines national property service operation with a growing technology platform called FieldVision, built to bring real-time visibility into what's actually happening on the ground. David, welcome to the show. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Very nice. Okay. David, to set the stage, can you take us back a bit? How did you first get into property operation and this industry?
Let me go back just a little bit farther and
Yeah.
say that, the first 20 years of my career, I ran a software company, data technology services out of Colorado. We built software for, multinational financial institutions, credit card companies, banks, insurance companies. And I did that for 20 years, which is where I have my software development background. 20 software developers working for me, and we did some really solid work. In the 90s, early 2000s, the model of outsourced software development changed a lot, and a lot of my customers started going to foreign outsourcing, India in particular. And so that business model that I had was no longer really competitive. So, I decided I was just going to plain do something else, and decided I wanted to do something that was local. I didn't have to compete with foreign labor, do something in a corporate environment, local services. So I got into property maintenance, commercial property maintenance, and I did that in 2007. had no had no electronic tools, no software to manage the field crews. And uh, it's a very different business when you manage field services than when you manage people in an office. When you manage people in an office, you know who shows up and who doesn't show up, and when they get there and when they leave, and you talk with people. Well, in this business, field services, people show up in the morning and then they leave for the whole day to go to properties that could be 15 minutes away or they could be an hour away. And then they just roll back in at the end of the day. And I thought that I knew what they were doing. Not in all cases, did they do exactly what I wanted them to do. And there was no way to really track that and to manage it. And so I decided that, I need a better way to do this. Now, I actually looked around for software at the time, and there was no good software to to do this. And the very few software packages that there were, that at the time they had rudimentary, it was more like offline check in, and then you would plug your cell phone or device back in when you got back to the office to download the data. The few packages that were out there were very expensive, prohibitively expensive for a smaller organization like I was running. And so, thought there's a real need here for software to be used remotely by field crews that would give somebody real-time data, real-time visibility into what's going on as the crews are out doing work. And so, I drafted up some designs and started working on it with some mobile developers and some of my staff, and we built FieldVision. So that's kind of how we got into, felt the necessity for building this platform. And, one of the main things was it's got to be a platform that is what, while it is enterprise grade, it can manage thousands of properties and users easily. It still has to be affordable for small to medium sized businesses as well as, large enterprises. So that was the design motivation for FieldVision.
Love it. This is great. Okay, then that's awesome. Then for someone hearing about PropTech Pro or Field Vision for the first time, I want to know how it works. How do you describe what the company actually does today?
So within PropTechPros, we have two divisions, if you will. One's the technology side, which is the Field Vision side. But I also have the service side of my business. And that service side, we service, it's going to be about 400 properties, 400 commercial properties here in the state of Colorado, soon to be expanding outside of the state. But so we send out crews, they use Field Vision. They've got, mobile app, the FieldVision mobile app on their phone, and they go to their first property of the day, and they're all set up on routes, and it's a very route oriented, maintenance. Monday they do 5 properties, Tuesday they do these next 5 properties, and so we have a lot of crews that do this work. And that service business is in the summer, it's landscaping, mowing lawns, taking care of weeds, basic groundskeeping. In the winter here in Colorado, we do snow removal. And for snow removal, it's even more of a critical application because that's time sensitive. It is there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of liability for both property owners and service providers in snow removal. But back to how the crews use it is they go out to their property, get out of the truck. One guy starts getting their equipment off the truck. The other one is doing the pre-work inspection. The idea is to show before and after photos of the work that we do. And so they'll take a picture of the lawn unmowed or, the maybe some debris that's accumulated in a parking lot. And I try to tell the crews, what we need to do is tell the story with the photos. The story of what it looked like, what a property looked like before we came, and what the property looked like when we were done. And obviously, some people are better at telling stories than others, but that's the basic idea. And so they'll take their check-in photos. We capture their GPS location to verify that they're actually there at the property they're supposed to be at. We capture a timestamp so we know when they got there. Then they go about doing the work that they do. It can be just routine weekly maintenance like mowing lawns, trimming trees, things like that, or it could be a specialty task that a customer has given us for that day. And then they will go through a little pick list that says, here's what we did. We did maintenance, we checked the irrigation, and, they can put what they have done. And then they will, at the end, they will take the checkout photos. The idea is to take the checkout photos, the after photos of the areas that match the before photos so that you can see clearly we did our work. And that work is then transmitted to the cloud. It's the check-in photos are hit the cloud right away. And, as soon as they have the checkout photos, they hit the cloud right away. Well, what makes us a little bit different, and I should say a lot different than other organizations in the field service space providing technology is we have an activity feed, very much like your LinkedIn feed, your Facebook feed, Instagram, right? You see everything that's going on. Well, a supervisor of crews can see, his feed and the work, and a supervisor might be supervising 20 properties or 30 properties. And so he can see at a glance that work is going on, where people are, can see the conditions, that the crews are working in, very important for snow removal. And I can see them back at the office, admins can see them. But here's one thing that's different is our customers can see them. So I might have a national bank that we service maybe 20 of their properties for. The facility manager for this region, he's got FieldVision on his phone and he can see everything that's going on his properties. He doesn't see, the grocery stores or the department stores or anything like that. He just sees his banks that we give him access to see, and he knows what's going on in his property. So the manager who sits in his office in New York and contracts somebody here locally can see in near real time what's happening on his properties. And that's something that he's not going to get from any other vendor out there. We're having a lot of success in keeping our customers happy and acquiring new customers for both the technology and for the service side of the business. I had mentioned, one thing that from a technology standpoint we do differently is, you know, provide a real-time activity feed. I think of it, the FieldVision, it's very much a collaboration tool. A property owner can see it, everything that's happening. A property manager, which is often not the same position, can see it. And then the field crew supervisors, everybody who is a stakeholder in the commercial property space, a particular commercial property, gets to see it. And obviously, it's not just an activity feed that you'd have to scroll down. You can go to the property section and look at a property, see the entire history of data, when they were there, what they did, and all the photos associated with it. And people can run reports straight from the mobile phone for different things. They can run reports on what's not done, which is a big deal for property managers, particularly in a time-sensitive set of tasks like snow removal. It's the goal that everybody wants to have their property cleaned and open by 9 a.m. when the bank opens. So a New York facility manager can look at FieldVision. He goes to the not done report and sees that out of his 20 properties, there's only one or two that aren't done, or they're all done. And he can have his daily staff meeting to say, yep, in Colorado, everything's taken care of. Before FieldVision, we would have our phones just blowing up. Every morning it snowed. So many phone calls, you couldn't take them all. With people saying, you got to this property in North Denver. You have this property, right? Yes, we're good on that. So from a status standpoint, we give everybody near real-time status of everything that's going on. While I'm bragging about how we're different, the other thing is FieldVision, it's entirely table-driven, meaning that all the prompts and what we call our service categories, be it landscape maintenance or snow removal, it's all data-driven. So it works for any field service company. We have people who are doing parking lot work, which has got nothing to do with mowing lawns, and they can set up their own service categories and service codes or tasks, be it parking lot striping or touch up or curb painting or things like that, or janitorial, which is, interior work, is a completely different set of tasks than exterior work. And so it's entirely data driven, entirely user customizable, so that any field service company can customize it for their own use. And it's also multilingual. So with the slide of a button, it instantly changes from English to Spanish. And because it is table driven, if somebody came to us and said, well, we're in Louisiana and so we need French, or somebody down the street from you says, well, can you put it in French? Yeah, we can do that. No problem.
It's amazing. I really love it. Bravo. Thank you so much for so much insight and details. And it makes so much sense. And I mean, yeah, why you don't have any competitors? I mean, or you do, I guess, but not. Okay, then at what point did you decide that your services alone were not enough and you needed to build technology like FieldVision?
You know, when we started to grow, when I first got into this business, we serviced it was probably about 50 or 60 properties. Even that was difficult. We would send crews out to do work, and there's sometimes crews would do work. I would tell somebody to do something, and they would do it the way they thought I wanted it done, which isn't always necessarily the same way I exactly wanted it done, which is, that's the typical management dilemma. You can explain something, and what's coming out of your mouth is not necessarily going into the ears of the person listening, right? And so, um, I would have to go, or I'd have to send a manager and say, go make sure that we actually did this task right. Well, that gets to be just unwieldy. You spend so much time doing site visits and, checking up on things that becomes full-time jobs in and of itself. And so as we started growing past that, it just became unwieldy. And so aside from the fact that I think it's a great enhancement to the clients, I just needed a better way to even manage my own crews, to know that we were actually doing that they were doing what we wanted them to do. And so we'll put a little pop-up message in the application that says, make sure you take a picture of the loading dock taken care of, right? And so we can see that, okay, they did what we asked them to do from the office. We can see that without having to go to the site every time to check everything out. So that was the first motivation, was just to better manage the uh the internal crews. And then, as we have, and but then being in the software business for 20 years, I thought, there's more stakeholders, and so we need to build it so that all the stakeholders can use it, can see it, can give us feedback, and it's made those relationships with the clients very, very sticky, because if they might be able to find somebody cheaper, but they won't be able to get not the same level of service and the same visibility that they get with us and with FieldVision. And so, I mean,
Yeah,
that's how I got into it. Now we're closing in on 400 properties across the state of Colorado, and Colorado's a big state. And so it really it helps everybody immensely.
I love it. By the way, it's amazing. How has Field Vision changed the way your clients work with PropTech Pro?
There's there's a couple really notable points as far as that goes. So in in some work, take like summer landscaping, crews might go out and mow, and people don't pay that much attention to whether the grass is this high or that high. It's not that it's big a deal, even when people walk into their property every, five times a week, right? But when it snows, like I had mentioned, that's kind of a fire drill. 400 properties, you got to have them open by 9 a.m. And there's stress on the client side because these grocery stores, they're going to have people showing up. And the penalties for slipping and falling when a sidewalk's not safe or a parking lot's not safe, it's substantial for everybody. And so in the real time sensitive tasks, I have clients that I can tell that they're using FieldVision because, they might call me up and say, "I see that your crew is at the North Denver location. Can you make sure they, remember to close the back gate when they're done," or something like. So I know that they are looking at it. And so there's a lot more engagement that the client has with the services that are going on. They're not waiting for their local store manager to call them and say, "We need something special," or "The crew forgot to do this." They're engaged in looking at it before the problems even happen. Or I've got a regional bank out of Oklahoma that's got branches here in Colorado, and they ask for a 7 a.m. status meeting every time that there's a snow event. And so I can go on the desktop companion, the management console, as we call it. It's the desktop version of the mobile app. And I can send them a 7 a.m. status report that they're sharing with their management team. And so they're a lot more engaged with us, with the process. And there's just a lot less panic and not knowing. So there's not those frantic calls at 6 a.m. saying, "Oh, you're taking care of our properties, right?" And I said, "Yes, we've got it." And with the tracking that we have, I can see what parts of town the various crews are in when they're checked in. We can see it visually on a map. And the clients can see it visually on a map. What properties are done, just they pull up the map and there's pins. The pins are either red, not done, or they're green, done. And they can see easily what's going on. And we automate, so we capture all this data, and not only does it just give everybody better visibility, but once the work is done, there's a lot better workflow because we can go in. And so if we have nearly 400, sometimes a property might need to be serviced twice if it's a heavy storm. So within a 24-hour period, we can do 600, 700 services. And then by the end of, a business day, that's even the same business day, somebody in the office, the supervisors, can quickly review photos to say, "That's a good service." Click, "That's approved." And then everything gets sent over electronically to the clients. So the client has a consolidated report at the end of the day. Here are all the services that we have done, and it's got billing information in it so that they can get right in, they can put it right into their system. We can put it to our accounting system and instantly generate invoices and then send them out end of day. And that's one thing. Another thing is we really streamline the workflow for the admin, the accounts payable people. So it really, really reduces the work they have to do. It used to be that it would take days, even a week or 2 weeks, to process all the paperwork for, to send out 600 invoices. And if it snowed twice in a week, there's 1,000, 1,500 invoices that you have to manually type in and send them out. And the customers would get stacks of invoices. But now it is very streamlined, and we can give them a file feed, an electronic, like a CSV file or whatever format they want, to put it into their system so that they don't even have to touch it. They just have to hit approve, review and approve. And so it saves a lot of work, not just for us, but also for the end customer. And then we can also upload it programmatically to some of the big work order systems like Corrigo Pro. That's an international work order system. Service Channel is another big international system. Axerion. So we integrate with customer backend systems to make it easier on them. So there's benefit for people in the field, for the people on the facility side, but also on the back office side. There's a lot of benefit for them as well.
Wow, that's great. Running a services business is already very complex, and adding a technology platform makes it even more interesting. What has been the hardest part of that combination for you?
For me personally, just the work involved, you know, switching from high-tech, complex processes to lower tech thinking, like, the mower wasn't set high enough when you mowed that grass, you know? It's just the back and forth between 2 things that are, competing for attention, and, if big, CEOs have multiple layers of management that they can delegate a lot of things to. I only have, me, I have another layer, my office admin, my operations manager, and then we have field supervisors. So I still have a lot of responsibility, even though I do have some management between me and the field crews. There's still, it's a relatively small business in terms of software companies and, national companies. So there's just a lot of work to do.
No, that's surely very, very different from the software company you were running before.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
But you had done from a service company, you created a technology company, basically.
Yes. Yes.
I hope your client knows that.
They do. They do. And then, we have been pitching our our new upgrades that we're doing. Um, Now we are accumulating, take the summer, for example. The crews are taking between 3,000 and 3,500 pictures a week. The volume of photo data now is getting to be a bit overwhelming. So what we experimented with this last summer and what was a very successful experimentation was we implemented some artificial intelligence, some image detection into the photos. So once the photos come in, there's a review process that we have, a high level review process to make sure things were done correctly. But there's so much data in those images. Like if there's a brown piece of grass, for example, that means the sprinklers are not working correctly. If there's a dead bush on the property, and there could be 500 bushes even on a small property, and the crews, they're very speedy, they have their head down there, they're getting through their routes, and they're missing, this dead bush, right? Which the client doesn't want a dead bush. We don't want a dead bush. And it would be too time consuming to look at every photo and just look for a dead bush or look for anything. There could be a crack in the curbs. There could be an exposed pipe, things like that. So what we did is we implemented image detection so that we could select a batch of services and run them. And the image detection software would look for the things that we tell it to look for, be it dry grass, dead trees, dead plants, and it will generate a report that says, here's all the properties that you have issues that you need to look at. So even with a 2-week experiment of image detection, and this happened toward the end of the summer season, we found many thousands of dollars worth of work that was just sitting there waiting for us to propose it to the client. We proposed it to the client and they said, yeah, we need that fixed. So there's, a revenue opportunity coming from the data contained in the photos. And so the next iteration of our artificial intelligence deployment is now coming for this upcoming season. We have our enterprise reports that are compiling the image detection from the photos and the data that the crews enter. And for a company that might have 50 properties that we manage, we can't, if we give them a 50-page report, they're not going to read it. They're not going to look at it. Even if it's 1 page per property, nobody's going to look at it. So the large language model and the image detection, it summarizes the data as a snapshot over, say, the past month snapshot to say, here's all the repairs you need. Here's the properties that need the most attention because of item 1, 2, 3, and 4. And here's the properties that need the least attention because they are in the best shape. And so we're we're using some of the tools, and we're using existing AI tools. In this case, it's some of Microsoft's open AI tools. And, we're not building our own AI engine or anything like that. We're just using some tools that are good and affordable, and it's coming up with really good results. And so we've shared this with our clients, and they are very anxious to see their new series of management reports, enterprise reports, as we're calling them,
Yeah,
along with some of the image detection finds that we're finding.
that sounds great. And looking ahead, what are you most focused on building or improving over the next year at PropTech Pros?
Really, over the next year, we are using our data gathering capabilities. The FieldVision mobile app is, I think it's just a data collection tool. That's first and foremost. The data comes in, we're building the engine to manage that data and to present that data in the most efficient, profitable managing of risk to the clients. Um, as we can. And so we have millions of photos of our client properties. And so the wealth of data in all those services and all those photos is tremendous. And so we are going to build the platform that it's being used very regionally here in one state, but we are going to expand our service business and our technology platform more on a regional basis, with an eye toward maybe a national presence. And I think we're the smallest company, the best one nobody's ever heard of. Hopefully they're going to hear about us now, with
Hopefully. I really enjoy it.
yeah.
No, this is great. This is wonderful. I thank you so much for sharing your journey and how PropTech Pros is combining real world operation with technology and AI.
Yes.
And makes a lot of sense. And I mean, you went a long way, but bravo, congratulations for everything.
Thank
I
you.
love
Well,
the conversation.
I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you,
I've
David.
I've seen a lot of your other podcasts, and you're out there doing good work helping
Thank you.
some of the small to medium sized technology providers get the word out. And so you're providing a very valuable service, and me and my staff, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you, David. And for those the audience would like to know more about your business or yourself, where can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, David LaFore. They can find me on the internet, www.proptechpros, that's PROS.com. And they can find me on Facebook too. So,
Perfect. Wonderful. Then, David, we should do it again in a year from now and see
yes,
your growth and how many states you went on.
yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for
Thank
taking the
you.
time. And that's it for today's episode of AI Interconnect. And if you enjoy it, share it with someone who is building the future, or better yet, someone who should be. And until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep building. Thank you, David. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.